Hello and welcome to the High Maintenance Hippie podcast. This is your host, Ashley from Ashley Taylor Wellness. On this podcast, we talk about all things beauty, health, wellness, and optimization. Being a high maintenance hippie represents not being boxed in, as I strongly believe that one size does not fit all. I'm a nurse turned coach, and I have learned so much about both conventional and alternative options, and I want to help you expand your options. I'm here to inspire you to learn new ways to improve your quality of life and to take your power back. I'm so excited that you're here, so let's get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the High Maintenance Hippie podcast. I have a very special guest with me today, Dr. Jamal Früster. He is someone that has touched me, physically at his practice when I have received chiropractic care on a couple different occasions, but also on a soul level. And I am just so grateful to have him here. And I might cry on this session because there's something about Dr. Jamal's presence and energy that my soul just feels it. It's just amazing. So Dr. Jamal is a chiropractor. He serves at the Source in Tucson. I've gone down there to visit him, so check it out if you're in the area. He is also a speaker and podcaster. Soul Coffee is the name of his podcast, so check that out. And he is also a life mentor for health professionals who are dealing with burnout. So we'll talk a lot more about that today. So thank you. I am so happy that you're here.
Oh man, I am so honored to be here, and I'm so excited that you got this thing going. As your voice needs to be shared with the masses, your energy needs to be shared in all ways, shapes, and forms. So, really honored to be here. Thank you all for listening, and I'm intending to be able to provide some potent value for y'all and really charge y'all up this beautiful day.
Yes. Okay, so one thing that you and I spoke about was the concept of that your energy is the medicine.
Mm,
And I think for a lot of people that would go over their head. And, I went to nursing school, I'm board certified, but even when I hear something like that, I really struggled. What does that mean? So what would you tell
yeah,
someone who doesn't understand that or that it's their first time hearing your energy as the medicine?
great question. So, I work with chiropractors, functional medicine doctors. I worked with chief medical officers, chief nephrologists. I've worked with nurses. I've worked with a myriad of providers, parents as well, hairdressers, estheticians as well too. As I've discovered that there's parallels energetically of people that just pour out, pour out, pour out, pour out. And the invitation when that first came in is your energy is the medicine is an invitation to remind them there's the concept of you can't pour from an empty cup, so you got to make sure your cup is full. I'm taking it a step deeper and saying when you enter the room, when you make eye contact with your patients, your practice members, the people you take care of, your kids, whoever it may be, they feel you. As human beings, we are sentient beings, meaning that we can feel. And in that, your energy, your confidence, the amount of life that is flowing inside you is going to be an invitation or a permission slip for people to feel more of themselves, feel more of the things that they haven't felt, and be able to at least borrow some of your hope, borrow some of your inspiration. And every time you step into a room, you have the opportunity to shift someone. So your energy is the medicine. I think of Nelson Mandela, one of the icons of our generation, and you could feel apparently his energy before he even stepped in the room. That's goals.
Mm-hmm.
But the invitation, once more, it's for all providers to be able to take care of themselves physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, in all ways, shapes, and forms. So that way, whenever bed you step next to, whatever patient you're connecting to, they can feel lighter, they can feel more inspired, and they can just feel a shift because of your energy.
Beautifully said. And it reminds me of the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Would you agree with that?
Mm. Oh yeah, for sure. Otherwise, it's all just a flex. Otherwise, it's
Yeah.
they're all just a diagnosis code. They're just an
Yeah.
ICD something, or they're just a combination of some pharmaceuticals they got to be prescribed. But I think the benefit of what I do is that I need to and I get to effort to see the human more so because in their body and in their physiology lies dysfunction. And from the dysfunction, there are certain thoughts, traumas, that are stuck in the body or toxins that are stuck in the body that have allowed for then symptoms of dis-ease such as pain, such as headaches, such as migraines, such as what I love to be able to pour into my people, burnout, and to be able to help fill their cups up understand what's going on in their life so that way they can go about being more potent, more powerful, and more present in a fashion that's natural to them and what they're supposed to do.
Yes. And so many of the providers that I worked with, even myself after years of night shift, I became burnt out. And so the quality of the care that I'm going to give, even if I'm doing my best, is not going to be the same when I'm just energetically maxed out. And that is so common. If you had to guess a percentage of people that work in the hospital setting that you know, what percentage of them would communicate that they're burnt out?
Burnt out in this moment, I'd probably easily say 80,
It's
90%.
the majority.
Burnt out at some time, I'd say 95, 99%.
Yeah. It is so common that that is one of nursing is one of the careers with the highest turnover rates. And people start there even on Instagram and TikTok. There are these reels of nurses, and it's comedic, but it's also very true. They're all bright eyed, and then after a year, you're just frazzled.
Right.
And you get in and you really want to help people. I think for me, the burnout came from thinking I was really going to be able to help people. And then on a soul level, realizing that's not what I'm doing. I'm making people comfortable in moments of pain, surgery, trauma, emergencies. That's beautiful. But so many times, it is not physical pain that is manifesting physically. And a great example, maybe you could speak to this too. I had a lady who had every August, she was hospitalized for back pain. And so she had had spinal surgeries and all these things, but she didn't have any issues except for August. And I asked her, I said, did something happen in August? And she said, it's the anniversary of my son's death.
Oh, man.
So what do you think the connection between something emotional, unresolved like that with physical pain, do you think there's a connection there?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I love that you brought this up. The discoverer of chiropractic, Dr. D.D. Palmer, he actually said 80 to 90 plus percent of why people get into pain is due to a mental or emotional cause. 80 plus percent, 80 to
Yeah.
90%, the vast majority. And for me, it makes sense because once more, as human beings, we can feel. We're sentient beings. However, a lot of people don't fully feel their emotions, don't want to fully feel their emotions, and they try to stuff or they try to repress, or if it's way too overwhelming, straight up, that's where trauma happens, and where our mind and our soul can kind of fracture in that moment, but the body or the matter keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
The body or the matter can keep going. However, if we don't allow space for these emotions to run their course, if we don't allow space for the instances of trauma to be able to be acknowledged, to be able to be seen, to be able to be felt, well, then we're not going to be able to unwind and be able to step into our wholeness and our integrity as we're supposed to, because there's still so much to be able to process that's still stuck in the past. And if you're stuck in the
Right.
past, physiologically, your mind is still stuck there too, but it's presenting in the present as if it was still in the past. So that's why it's so important to be able to heal, because if you don't, you're only going to be able to, you'll be stuck in these patterns. Like your patient, every August she feels this back pain. Well, is it the body just I almost see it as like this playground, or I see it as this field where then these symptoms are running around very actively, or this energy is running around very actively, versus actually being able to understand, unwind, and unravel it.
Yeah. It's very interesting, the patterns, because a traumatic event happened when I was 14 and I did some sexual things. It was published on Pornhub without my consent, and it's all scrubbed now. So, it's all gone. But every October, well, I'm 35, so from 14 until 28, I don't think I had many sober days in my life because I didn't know what to do with my feelings.
Mm,
I didn't see it as running from emotional pain. I saw it as I'm just having fun. And I think that's how it starts for a lot of people. But the truth is I was running from feelings. And I was really interested in doing the physical work. And you're one of the first people that I met where I felt so safe in your presence that I just bawled my eyes out. I mean, I'm sure you
yeah.
remember, like, I just cried because I'm like, this person, yeah, it makes me cry. This person sees you for all of your messiness and loves and accepts you. And it was so different from from what I had experienced, and it was almost like my heart broke open, but in the most beautiful
Mm,
way. So
mm.
some people might think, "Oh, you're crying, that's bad," but it's like a feeling of love, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, it makes sense to be able to capacity to have such intense feelings of love that it
Yeah.
just gushes out of your face. I think is one of the most powerful experiences as human beings, and something that you mentioned just now. A lot of people can. I say a lot of men. I just did a podcast on why men need men with one of my brothers, Dr. Brendan Collinsbride,
Yeah.
and we talk about how a lot of men, they're only allowed to feel anger. They're not allowed to cry. They're not allowed to be sad. They're not allowed to be in pain. They're not allowed to feel these things. But the messed up thing about it is that crying is actually a physiological or a body driven way, an innate way to help bring us back into a parasympathetic nervous system, or AKA a relaxed rest and digest nervous system. So if you're not allowing yourself to cry, you're literally going against nature and your nature and trying to maintain this stress state because you think, or people, not you, but people think that they need to be guarded. People think that they need to be vigilant. People think that they just can't allow themselves to be vulnerable and be seen when it's in our vulnerability, it's in the trust, it's in the safety where we can actually melt. Because fact of the matter is, I can do an exam for somebody, I can do all the neurological tests, orthopedic tests, and different things, but at the first few minutes, if I don't establish connection, if they don't trust me, if they don't feel safe in my presence, well, then for me, I'm doing them a disservice, but we can only go so far in the healing journey. That's why, whether it be those who are listening to this podcast, and I've worked with Ashley, and I've been in her energy, or I have a chiropractor, have a provider, a massage therapist, a dentist, a barber. You gotta have some kind of connection, otherwise, you're only gonna be limiting your expression. And if you're limiting your expression, that's literally how disease starts.
Yeah, that's very beautifully said. If we are limiting our expression, that is where disease starts. And for me, it wasn't safe to feel my feelings. There's a lot pent up in here. And the meaning of those feelings is where I think a lot of people
Ooh,
struggle. The meaning.
ooh,
If I cry, then I'm weak. I'm changing my relationship with that, which is why I ugly cry on here. It's okay. I'm
yeah,
human. That's part of the experience.
it's beautiful.
But I have clients that I work with, or even patients that I worked with, and they would cry and apologize for it. I
Yep.
don't know if I'm sure that I did apologize when I first saw you. I'm so sorry for crying. I'm so sorry for feeling. I'm so sorry for feeling. It's if you think about it,
Right.
what are we really sorry for?
Right. Right. And I think it comes from, I'm reading the Fifth Agreement, which, if y'all haven't read the Four Agreements, it's so good. Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah.
And the Fifth Agreement, spoiler alert, is be skeptical, but listen. And what he dives deeper into the different applications of the Four Agreements is to be able to understand humans as a species right now in society have been domesticated.
Yeah.
You're you're good if you don't cry. You're bad if you do cry. You're good if insert myriad of different reasons, causes, shame, guilt manipulation. But the main point here is to be able to begin to understand how have we been domesticated and how has that shown up in our individual lives to where we now judge ourselves, which started as an external judgment, but now we judge it in ourselves. So that way, then when we do feel or when we do cry or we do something, we just automatically apologize for it. But
Yeah.
the one of the first agreements is to be able to sensitize yourself to being able to understand, to be impeccable with your word. And in being impeccable with your word, it's not just integrity, it's don't use your word contrary to yourself. Don't use your word contrary to yourself. So if you are apologizing literally for how you be, the energy that's coursing through you, I imagine that, and then you start things off, you're going to put yourself into a stress state, guilt, shame, and then you already need to work through so many of these things. But you got to be able to examine that human beings gossip a lot. He talks about the main form of communication is gossip. And as that's getting conditioned into our society, and we're seeing that as kids growing up, it's like agreements that we didn't agree to. Like no one said, "Oh, well, I agree to apologize if I feel my feelings." So
Right.
you got to be able to unwind, unravel, and as imagine what you're doing, and you do so well. is, really take people on journeys and giving them permission to unwind a lot of that which they're experiencing mentally and emotionally, but now that they're experiencing physically, which is where you meet them. But then as where you're taking them deeper in your work now, you're able to take them more into themselves.
Yes. And would you, well, maybe one of the reasons why I struggled to cry in front of you and I felt weird about it is because not a lot of people can sit with people in those heavy moments. It makes them
Yes.
uncomfortable. So growing up, I was around people that met my physical needs. I had food, shelter, all of that. But when it came to my emotional needs, was I too much? Or was it that what I was feeling was too much for that person to be able to sit with?
Yes.
And so it was don't cry, don't do that. Maybe that's what they were told. So that's why it's such a huge compliment, I think, when I can feel safe enough to just let it all out. I don't even
Yes.
consciously choose that. It just comes out. Something in my soul is like, this is a safe place. And so I thank you for that.
Hmm. Absolutely.
But for you, did you have to learn this, or were you growing up in a place where it was welcomed for you to feel all of your emotions? Or when did you
Mm.
learn that?
So it's definitely a process. I understand now that I'm a Leo with a
Okay.
Pisces moon, which means I'm a big cat that feels a lot of feelings. And I've always been sensitive to the energy of a room. I've always been sensitive to how someone might be feeling. I've always been empathetic. But as I started to understand energy, astrology, and then, of course, my profession, chiropractic, I was like, oh, okay. A lot of the times I wasn't even feeling what was necessarily mine, but I come from, a beautiful, loving home. My parents are the absolute freaking best. I love them. My dad's black, and I would very seldom see him cry. It was only like very, very intense times where he might shed a tear. I never saw my dad weep. It wasn't until I was in my mid to late 20s where I saw him actually weep, like in process deep grief and things. My mom actually, her first son, I'm the middle child, her first son passed when he was 5. So
Wow.
growing up, I always saw my mom. I would always go to the cemetery with him, put flowers on his grave, sing to him happy birthday, like all the things to process grief actively. So I was in a house where my model as my dad, he may have not expressed fully, and but my mom always felt, and I had the perception I felt safe to, but I was sexually abused when I was 9, and the the abuse itself wasn't the most traumatic part. It was how I was treated afterwards. It was the humiliation that I felt afterwards, deep in my system. And being bullied and being humiliated, that then became my core wound, which I've now efforted to shed as well too. But in being so deeply humiliated and in having that happen to me, my thing was I didn't tell anybody for 14 years. My sister, my parents, my best friends. So I didn't, because I didn't feel worthy, because I didn't feel enough, because I didn't want to be a burden. So that's actually the core where I come from. And it wasn't until graduate school where I met my mentor, Dr. Brett, Dr. Lance, met the
Hmm.
community that is now Kairos Training Culture. I was able to actually start to work through some of these deeply ingrained emotions that made a lot more sense as I was able to excavate this parts of myself to clear the rubble or to clear the judgments, to clear any of the barriers and boundaries that were keeping me so repressed, and doing holotrophic breath work, going into practice and sitting, with different ceremonies, moving, breathing, regulating, like you started to say, starting to regulate my nervous system and starting to shed a lot of the trauma and energy that was stored in my fascial network, that was stored in my muscle system, and understanding how that comes from a very neurologically and rooted sense. And it's all by intelligent design, by the way. That's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
It wasn't until grad school where I truly felt like I started to live, which was in 2017. And when I say truly start to live, I mean freely expressing myself and surrounding myself with people who could support that. Because I do think that depending upon the depth and the container that our parents have and our support system has, a lot of people aren't used to or have the capacity for massive emotions or strong emotions. So, of course, they perceive your emotion as a threat, so they shut down, so they shut you down, which
Yeah.
is then a perpetual cycle, which I think so many people have experienced. So, growing up, it's not that I wasn't invited to express, I just had the perception that
Right.
I couldn't, or that I didn't want to express because I'd be a burden. And a lot of healthcare professionals now, I think they walk with that burden kind of mentality, or they're quick to apologize, or they do whatever it is. And it comes from, I think, needing to evaluate our roots and our attachment styles and our traumas and what happened to us when we were younger. And as we unpack these different things in our support networks and keep them malleable, I think it's going to be massively valuable, because community I've found to be one of the most powerful aspects to help in one's healing journey.
Absolutely. And some people say that the opposite of depression isn't happiness, but it's purpose, and that we need community. And a lot of people
Mm.
isolate. I have struggled with depression for
Hmm.
many years, and that's the first thing that I do. I don't want to be a burden, so I will isolate, go into my own world. But it feels really good for me to be there for someone else. Why would I not let someone else be there for me?
Mm. Hmm. Hmm.
Right? Where does that come from? Not feeling worthy. Same thing, not feeling worthy, not wanting the things that I've gone through to affect other people. And what's so beautiful, I mean, about the fact that you have your podcast and now I'm starting mine and I've shifted out of the world of nursing, it was so disconnected. I wouldn't say I was here, but it felt like I couldn't share these real things. I couldn't cry with my patients. I couldn't
Mm.
tell them real life stories about things because it was professional. But what's really helped people heal, I feel that I've helped people way more as a coach than I ever did in the hospital, because
Wow.
there's so much I couldn't share.
Right.
And on Instagram, I get to be vulnerable. I get to cry. I get to talk about how scary it was to start over after leaving relationships, after leaving the hospital, all of that. I mean, this is really, really vulnerable stuff, and it's messy. And I want to show people that, because that's if we don't feel it, then it's going to stay in our body.
Right.
It's going to stay in our body. So people like you are creating these containers that allow people
Mm.
to just be able to show their most authentic self, whatever's coming up. And we're not going to cry forever. I think a lot of people,
Right.
once I start
That's.
feeling
Mm.
it, it'll go on forever. Would you say people say that to you?
I think people get scared of feeling their feelings because they'll get stuck.
Yeah.
Yet, what they don't realize is that they're already stuck in not feeling their feelings. So,
Right.
either way, and the cool part is when you lean into those feelings, surround yourself with allies, with community, with people that you can actually feel, it is going to be temporary, because emotions are supposed to only be 90 seconds. Biochemically,
Mm-hmm.
neurologically, emotions are only supposed to last 90 seconds or less. However, due to our mind playing certain feedback cycles and loops, and us having certain thoughts and being in certain environments, and this is, I think, the most important part when it comes to your emotions, or it comes to just health as a unit, is your adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
The human being is one of the most adaptable species on this planet. I think it is, and especially with the power of our mind, different from our brain, two different things, but the power of our mind to be able to powerfully shift our reality and our perception of an impulse. Example A, you're a nurse. There would be, I imagine, say you're at the hospital and there's insert stimulus here. There's a code red. I'll put it whatever it may be. And I don't even know if that's actual code. I just said code,
It
insert
is.
color here.
There's a code brown. Code brown. We don't like that one. I'm just kidding. That means there's poop. But code red is fire.
Okay. Well, there's insert stimulus here.
Yeah.
All those nurses are going to have a different reaction.
Right.
You want to talk about health? Insert Spanish flu virus. Let's go back in history. People with the that were active in their symptoms could cough in the mouth of another human being. They did research on this. Cough in the mouth of another human being, and it's not guaranteed that that human being would be sick. They could cough in the
Mhm.
mouth of another human being and nothing would happen. Why is that? It's because that human being has the ability to adapt. This is more biologically and physically, but the
Mhm.
invitation is to start examining your life. Where are you stuck? Physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually when it comes to your health? And then what are the resources that you need? What are the communities that you need? What are the resources that you may need to unstuck yourself? And a lot of the times, it's just being willing to take the first step. And there's sometimes been trauma around, maybe they asked for help in the past. And now
Mhm.
with men, we found they're now scared that when they ask for help, one, that's step one, that's enough. But going beyond that, they're scared that they're not going to be held, that help isn't going to be received, they're going to be judged, they're going to be manipulated, whatever it is. So you got a lot of humans that are just like, oh, it's not safe to feel my feels, when it's like, when we can make it more the normal, which is normal physiology to feel our feelings, I imagine this healthcare system, sick care system, and just the way of being a human being is absolutely going to change.
Yes, I would agree with that. And it's interesting what you said about the cough, because even in 2021, we had someone that eventually was positive for CV, coughed in my face before all of this. I didn't get sick once from being in the hospital. I was around people for years and years and years, and physically sick, that is.
Yes.
But what I did take on was a lot of emotional pain. I did not have a lot
Ooh.
of energetic boundaries. And I
Ooh.
would go home and just think about what was going on. And it really started to take a toll, especially when I'm supposed to say and believe I'm doing everything that I can to help you, when I know that that is not true.
Mm.
So physically, maybe we stabilize you.
Mm.
So burnout, obviously, very, very common in nursing, and you work with a lot of healthcare professionals. But just like you mentioned, when I get my hair done, my hairdresser, she's burnt out. The lady who does my lash extensions, just it's everywhere.
It's
It is
everywhere.
everywhere. It is not just healthcare. So where do you think that comes from?
I love the question. Because the main thing that comes up and what I love being able to explore and let you do is why. Why is this phenomenon of burnout occurring? Such a loaded question. I think, in as short as I can place it, is that there is a high demand that has been placed upon insert provider healthcare professionals' shoulders, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and I'll even say societally. You talk about CV, our healthcare heroes, the people that are in the hospital. There's been this expectation that's literally just been placed upon them to help. I'll just say help, not even help heal, but to help stabilize the sickest country in the world,
Mm-hmm.
the sickest country in the world. When it comes to hairdressers and different things, you can examine the different energetics of just providing and what that requires, and being able to run a business and being able to show up for yourself. Like, there's such a high demand and there's so much chaos. There's so much information in the world. We got
Yeah.
these phones, like, there is so much overwhelm. And when systems are chronically overwhelmed, it is only going to be a matter of time before we start to see symptoms
Mm-hmm.
that then are pain, exhaustion, or if you want to speak specifically to burnout, emotional exhaustion. That's
Mm-hmm.
first precursor. There is People are tired of being tired of being tired that they're tired, and that's because they're just going, 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 going. And energetically, we weren't set up to do that. We were meant to rest. We were supposed to be able to slow down. We were supposed to be able to recuperate. And here in the United States, that opportunity has kind of wiped itself out, especially for providers. But if you're not moving from this then feminine charged state of rest, recuperation, inspiration, and actually being able to reflect and slow down and then move in a masculine way where it's supposed to be in a structured way, which is okay, but we're in this over dependence and over masculine or hyper masculine society where it's all about the doing, 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 doing. And I think due to our domestication, this is new, there's then the guilt and shame that has come into us where, well, if you rest, you're lazy. That's
Yes.
domestication. That's something that came from another. It's like, you are a horrible human being, or you're not doing all that you can for your patients. When it's like, I'm watching my language, but it's like, yo, I got nothing left. I got literally nothing left. I go home, I don't even have energy for my kids. I don't have energy for my furry friends, let alone I don't have energy
Mm-hmm.
for me. So I think
Yeah.
the why behind the demand, because burnout is such a myriad of things, and there's a holistic and a very whole way to move through it. One of my mentors, I got to mention her, Erica Cooney, the burnout professor. She does such a great job of highlighting the different aspects of the nervous system, even though she's not a chiropractor, which is awesome. But it's the body's ability to adapt. And with burnout, there's a lack of an ability to adapt. Why? Because there's no space and there's no
Mm-hmm.
consistent space.
So you mentioned as far as why people would stay busy. Well, one, the belief that it makes you lazy. I work with clients all the time. I would say 90% of them feel that if they slow down, they're not going to be able to achieve their health goals. And I would strongly argue that. I invite them to explore having more restorative time and letting go of some things and seeing how they feel. If they're open to it, if they're not, that's okay. But one of the reasons, just like I mentioned, from 14 to 28, I used a substance almost every day of my life. It's because I didn't know how to feel. So
Right.
I think that's why a lot of people are busy as well. If you're busy, then you don't have to sit with your feelings.
Right.
So meditation is something that has really helped me. But in the beginning, I didn't like it because it was just me and my thoughts. And that
Ooh.
brought up a lot of stuff. And I'd rather avoid because I think the saying time heals all wounds, I don't know that I agree with that anymore
Nope, I don't.
at all.
Nope.
And that is a saying that a lot of people believe. "Oh, if I just distract myself enough, I won't feel this anymore." And what I've learned is that the feelings don't go away. And the longer that I suppress the crying, the anger, whatever feeling I have, it will come out at another time. So sometimes if I get upset about something and I'm like, well, this reaction seems a little disproportionate to the situation, like there's a dish left in the sink or something. And I
Mm.
just get, that's not something that would upset me. But just hypothetically, if I got really upset about that, is it really about the dish in the sink or is it something old that's showing up
Right. And
that we don't know what to do with?
this is a
Yeah.
very important point too, which I love that you just reflected that. It is important to understand health is cumulative. Health is cumulative. Your thoughts are cumulative. Your reaction to these thoughts are cumulative. So once more, if you're just holding things in and then your kid does insert thing here or the Wi-Fi breaks or someone cuts you off in traffic and you lose it, it wasn't that one thing that led to this cascade of emotions or pain or whatever maybe. Same thing. It's not that you picked up your kid this last time, now you messed up your back. Nah, homie, you weren't taking care of yourself and you're not moving your body, you're not nourishing yourself with water and with good food. Your thought nourishment isn't on point. You're not recuperating well. So it's like when you start to examine these different pillars, because there's pillars to natural health, like you talk about them all the time, and people don't honor that. And one thing also I think that's very important for us to start decoding this domestication. You said a lot of your clients said that they feel like or they feel that they wouldn't be able to recuperate or they would be less than if they slow down or they wouldn't reach their health goals.
Yes.
I am challenging more often people saying I feel that because that's not a feeling, that's a thought and that's a paradigm,
Mm,
that's a perspective
yeah.
different from then biochemistry and be like, oh well, I feel like I can't reach my health goals. That's not there's not a emotion that's I can't reach my health goals if I recuperate. That's a perception and a judgment of how you're feeling. So as we're able to start decoding and taking back our sovereignty, I like to say, of
Hmm.
what it is that we actually want to do because we if we can govern our thought and we can master our minds more, well then you can do anything.
Hmm.
And it's important to be able to charge our
Yeah.
people up with it.
So you said thought nourishment. And I think that's very interesting because I went to a Tony Robbins event and, like I said, no stranger to depression. I've taken antidepressants. I'm not really a fan of SSRIs. I'm not here to tell anyone what's right for them. However, he shared that after a period of time, if we do not change how we're thinking, those thoughts literally create a chemical response in the body. So you can take something that elicits a chemical response in the body, like a pharmaceutical, it's your right to do. But if you're not changing the foundation and the thoughts
Mm.
and what you're consuming, and I'm not just talking about food, although that's part of it, the conversations we have, the things that we watch on TV, the music, all of the things that we're consuming, the thought nourishment, that's going to override the effects of the medication. And people think, oh, I just need more medication. And once again, not against it, but that is not the only or the biggest piece of the puzzle, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Because what you're starting to hit on, which is super juicy, people talk about the placebo effect, but a lot of people don't know about the nocebo
Right?
effect. So the placebo effect is people can have a sugar pill and they think it's medicine, and then they just magically get better. That can be awesome, but also if people don't believe that they're going to get better due to insert or outside thing here, then this is also very important because once more, it just comes to the quality of our thought because example A, I like using this. It's like I've walked on fire 15, 16 times, and a lot of other human beings are doing that. So people are like, oh, I couldn't do that. Well, you saying that is affirming that you can't. And the
Right.
only reason I'm sharing this is because when we apply this phenomenon of image, this hope-based inspiration, this feat, if you will, of whether it be walking on fire or healing from stage 4 metastasized cancer, if you want to bring it back to health. If one of these humans has gone through it, if you've worked through sexual abuse and going
Mhm.
through, all those traumas, it's a reflection of you can too. And I think a lot of people right now, Ash, are just experiencing just broken will, broken faith, broken trust in their bodies. And they're really having a tough time in working through life because they're operating with a low belief system.
Right. That's one of the first things that I ask all of my clients to do. Week one, what are the beliefs that tell you that making the changes you would like are hard or not possible for you? And I will go through
Nice.
each one of those. And then on week 12, we go back, and so many of them are like, I cannot believe that that's what I believed. Because how can you really tangibly measure life coaching? It's different
Right.
than a weight loss program or something like that. So just to see the story that they were telling themselves, that is so powerful. And our
Mm,
body does not know the difference between something real and imagined. So even with a
hmm
lot of current events going on, that was a big source of my burnout in 2020. I was very hyper vigilant, like all the things going on. I don't regret speaking out. However, I was living in a state of fear the majority of the time, not an elevated place. And that started to affect my life force and
mm,
my mood and all of that. So it's all connected. And I think chiropractors know that better than anybody. And I have so much respect for the profession. A lot of people do think that chiropractors are quacks. Do
oh,
you
of
do you think
course.
they're my favorite type of doctor because I feel like they get it more than anybody else. I feel like you
Mm,
get it more than anybody else because it truly is all connected. So most
mm,
people think going to a chiropractor means snap pop you're good. And you had said something to me that you're like, yeah, okay, that's great, but that's really not the biggest piece of this. So can you
mm.
elaborate on that?
Man, what a great conversation. This is great. First and foremost, I just always want to recognize you and just exploring, more of these, because what I think you're doing with your coaching as before, chiropractic, understanding and using almost our thoughts and the quality of autosuggestion or the quality of someone's thoughts as a metric that they're improving, as a metric that they're progressing, as
Hmm.
a metric that they're adapting, as a metric that they're evolving. Some people will say, "Oh, I need a outcome assessment tool, or I need to measure." They need that, which is cool, but I think the evidence is in the person. The evidence is in the biology. If this person is exuding more happiness, more joy, being on purpose, reporting that they're more adaptable, reporting that they have more energy available to play with their kids, reporting that they're charged on their dreams and they're feeling more confident, they're feeling more trust in themselves. These are the this is the evidence that we get to pay attention to, that we get to celebrate as life mentors and coaches, because people, I'll say the majority of society, they don't want to recognize or acknowledge that because it's a placebo or they need to have paper or whatever it may be. So anyone that's listening to this, I just want to encourage y'all. If you're, whether you're working with Ashley or, you're working with someone that's helping facilitate things, your thoughts are so real. You
Hmm.
aren't your thoughts. However, you can appreciate how your thoughts are shifting, because I imagine you're able to actually, I picture this river analogy. You're able to step out of the river and you're actually able to observe the river versus just getting smacked by, the debris and trunks and trees and stones and things that you might encounter in the river, which is life. But if once more you're able to observe it and not just get stuck within it, I think that there's so much juice there, Ash, and being able to recognize our people.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I
Oh,
know I asked you many questions there, but what would you say to someone who just believes chiropractic care is snap, pop, crackle, and you're out of here? What would you say to that?
I think it's the majority of people I might encounter, like when I'm networking and things, and they're like, "Oh, you're a chiropractor," and they're like, "Oh, oh, oh, oh." They just like point at like one of their body parts, and I'm like, "What? Like, what do you want me to do?" Like, and I make it a game. I like to be playful. I like to tell them, "Hey, eggs get cracked, balloons get popped, ropes get twisted." I tell them, "You're a human being. You are an extension of nature. You're a piece
Mm.
of all that is, and this body is divinely created, and it's highly intelligent. You get adjusted. We help shift your neurology. We help shift your perspective. We help your body heal, adapt, and evolve naturally. Now, if you want to step into that, you step this way. But if you prefer the snap, the crack, the pop, the sound, I'm just not for you. There's probably other chiropractors that are for you, but with my work at the core of it, I like to go deep. And I
Hmm.
can't be going deep with someone that's just focused on something that is very superficial and just a byproduct of stuck joints that are now moving a little bit more, or just a release of gas, excuse me. I educate my people. We're looking at the neurological implications and how your body's shifting. What's the tone of your system? What are the patterns neurologically of your system? How well is your brain talking to your body, and how well is your body talking to your brain? That's where we do a whole functional analysis and assessment of our people so that we can establish where they're at once more. But in between every single adjustment, I always like to ask my people, what's different? How are you shifting? What are you noticing that's different? Because I love to empower and encourage my people. What they're experiencing is very real, and I'm not here to fix you. That's one other thing that's very
Hmm.
freaking important, that a lot of people are like, "Oh, can you fix me?" I mean, I'm sure you get clients too, like, "Oh, can you fix me? Or can you fix this?"
Hmm.
And I check them. Like I straight up, I check them. Like, I'm not here to fix shit. Part of my
Yep.
language, but I was just like, I am not here to fix shit. I was like, I'm here to help you heal yourself,
Yeah.
because you're already doing that. But somewhere along the lines, you forgot that that's what happens. You got disconnected from your body's power and the intelligence that comes with that. Your mind is stuck. You're stuck in an environment and a relationship that's not honoring you, that's eliciting these symptoms. So that's why I tell people to pay attention, because I can't hold their hand and I'm not with them when they leave the source. So what I encourage them to do is to pay attention and be able to have more excitement, trust, and respect with their body, so that way they can come, when they come back to me, they can share what they've done. It's like, I like to think it's like I'm just like a spiritual pit stop, or I'm just like I'm an energetic pit stop for you to be able to rotate the tires a little bit or to shift, so that way when you go back out to life, you're aligned literally at the at your spinal level and at the soul level, so that way when you do hit the bumps to life, you once more you can adapt, because now you got a nice chassis system and you're able to like ride these bumps more. Because life, I don't know about you as of late, Ash, as I can appreciate where you're at, but it's just like this. And if you're listening to
Yes.
this, I'm just doing this like wave with my hand, because it feels like a roller coaster. And you know what? I'm here for it.
A lot of people wait for the roller coaster to end, and I tell them you're going to be waiting a long time. The challenges
Oh,
do not go away. We just
right.
have to become stronger, more resilient, more adaptable. And that is the work of coaching, is to help people develop those life skills. I'm not here to fix you, tell you what to eat, what to do. I'm actually robbing someone of the ability for them to be their own problem solver. And we don't
Mm-hmm.
trust ourselves. School told us, and even some people who sign up for coaching, they're like, did I do the forms right? I'm like, there's no right or wrong. It's what is the right answer for you?
That's good.
And it's so foreign for people. And so I do speak to a more mainstream audience, not necessarily because some people have been around since 2020, but even then, people expect someone else to be able to tell them what's right for them. And I
Right.
want to present options and help the person learn to trust themselves, which requires taking the ego out of medicine. And for so
Mm-hmm.
many people,
Mm.
doctors, I mean, I think it's almost like hazing. You go through so many years of
Straight up.
education, you spend so much money. To start over isn't even an option. How are you going to make that much money? I guess you could as an entrepreneur, but for a lot of people, they feel stuck. And what you leave with in many cases is this ego. You know, you're on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
Society puts you on a pedestal. In 2020, I was a hero. Not in 2021, but you know how quickly that can
Right.
change. But that's okay.
Right.
But so many, the difference between someone like you and the doctors that I worked with, even in 2021, and I won't name any names of facilities where I worked, the pulmonologist would not go into the room and lay a stethoscope on the patients. He was too afraid of the patients. We signed up to take care of sick people,
Ooh.
right?
Ooh.
It
Wow.
was it
Yeah.
was very different from what I experienced here at my doctor's office at Holistic Urgent Care or with people like you. We're not afraid of other people and we trust our bodies. And when we take care of ourselves, we don't have to live in fear of every pathogen. And why are
Right.
we susceptible to pathogens? But taking the ego out of medicine is really hard for people. People want to be the fixer because that meets some need for the person, significance or
Mm-hmm.
extrinsic value or worth, maybe. But I don't
Mm.
feel that from you. And I love that you say that I'm
Mm.
not here to fix you. I'm here to guide you
Mm.
back to yourself. And that's the approach that I take as well
Mm.
in a different way.
Yes. Oh, give me some. Give me some.
Yes.
Bow.
I don't know where
Oh
my camera
man,
is. There we
I
go.
well, one thing that I think is very important that you mentioned is taking the ego out of medicine. As literally on my way over to, prepare for this podcast, one of my patients, she sent me something via IG, and I think the subtitle of the book was Eight Laws or Eight Powers of Love, and it was a really quick quote in mentioning ego and how sometimes a lot of people may not know they need to heal because the wound is so deep.
Interesting. Okay.
and and I was like, ooh, this made me think of the wounded healer or the
Right.
wounded facilitator or the wounded healthcare provider. Let me help everyone. Let me fix, not even help each other. Let me fix or let me heal. Let me do this so that way I feel better. Let me
Right.
fix this person so that way I feel better. So that way I don't need to fix myself or I don't need to look at myself, because something you said about meditation that's really important and potent, I think, is that a lot of people, they're not ready to sit with that internal war, because I was there in grad school when I first got there. I was depressed, I was anxious, I was burnt out because I was trying literally everything for a club, trying to establish myself, but trying to just find something to feel something when I didn't know how to feel before I met Brett, before I met Lance. And when
Yeah.
I would close that door in a Life Village retreat, and it was just me with a roommate that I still didn't really know, so I didn't have any community, and I shut that door, it'd be hell. Every tear, like I remember still being crawled up in this like fetal position, just weeping how much I missed my parents, how much I missed my sister, how much I missed my community. Because I went from having, I say it's humbly, but having I'll just say a great collegiate track career with great community, being very well connected to my school, to knowing nobody, fresh new start. And that feeling of just loneliness, of doubt, of depression, of anxiety, of just being so depleted and feeling so lost in the unknown, it can crush people. And I think what
Hmm.
we get to do with this podcast, what we get to do with our work, and what I ever and want to do, I want the unknown to be inspiring and exciting for people, because that's where there's so many gifts. That's where there's so
Hmm.
much, eh, um, things that we can't see beyond our mind, which is the point. So that way, the universe or God or whatever you subscribe to wants to give you these gifts. But that's why if we can help people work and build their own school, their tools and life skills, like you said, I like to say, giving them principles, giving them, axioms or foundations they can actually grasp. Well, when they actually move into the world, they can advance with more trust, more confidence, more faith in themselves that things are going to work out because they at least know how to take care of themselves.
Yes. Yes. And in different ways, that's the type of work that I want to and am doing as well. Because if we are not resilient, we're going to crumble. I think there are going to be many more curveballs that come our way.
Straight up.
And it's not about hiding from every problem. It's like, how do I thrive in this situation? How do I pivot? How do I grow? And that is not typically the norm. So
Mm,
another thing you and I spoke about is I have been really practicing being more self-aware. And something you mentioned, which is a little bit different, would be self-recognition. So
mm,
can you speak
mm,
to both of those? How are they similar, but how are they different?
mm. Such a juicy question. First and foremost, I think self-awareness is everything. Like, because what you don't know, what you don't know, and what you don't know may be keeping you stuck in a pattern, or
Right.
why you're at physically, mentally, emotionally, relationship-wise, financially, professionally, um, family-wise, or just missing out on life. So, the practice of being self-aware and humble enough to move through that journey, I think, is the most empowering thing, because at the core of my work too, I want to have more intentional and more powerful, self-aware human beings. So that way they
Hmm.
don't need me. Like I don't, I'd love to see my
Yeah.
people forever, whether that's once every other week, once every 3 weeks, once every month, whatever it may be. But there needs to come a point where they're able to be more self-sufficient. And in order to be self-sufficient, you need to be self-aware. Now, to be able to recognize oneself, I think, is an important, and it's a new practice for me, as there's different signs and evidence of life in biology and from a chiropractic philosophy. A lot of people don't know this, but there's actually a philosophy that governs the roots of chiropractic and keeps it and defines what it is versus what it isn't. And one of them is the evidence of life. There's five established. There's assimilation, So what are you intaking? There's excretion. What are you letting go? There's adaptation, which is how are you now shifting things based upon, that what you're letting go and what you're intaking. There's growth, so like muscular growth or, growth in size. And then there's reproduction. And reproduction, I like to think of as well, you could think survival of the fittest, but I also think it's like reproduction of thought,
Okay.
like a pattern that's alive and it's able to reproduce. If an organism has these five things, it's alive, and I imagine it's thriving. The sixth sign, which I thought about in October 2021, I believe, with my good brother Matt, um, he we were having a conversation, and he mentioned that if that there's a puppy that just walks into a room, it's gonna do something to people. People are like, oh my God, oh, it's a puppy. The life in me recognizes the life in you. It stirs something up. I think if people are in connection with their emotions, when they recognize certain things, it's going to do something to them. That's how they move and navigate through life. The importance of self recognition for me came in as a practice because I think it came from a wound of I'm not worthy, I'm not enough.
Mhm.
And I'll just leave it at that. In order to move past and transmute this pattern or this thought form, it was imperative for me to recognize myself, because a lot of people, I say, I'll stick to me. I was an athlete. I loved being out and about, and that there was a crowd or they'd be cheering or whatever. That charges me up. I think that there was this validation, or there was this um, need for like external validation to know that I'm doing a good job, or like you even said with your intake paperwork, that do this right. Well, who said you even needed to check in with me if you did this correctly?
Right.
And for me, where self recognition comes is being able to really, literally recognize myself. I know that I am supposed to use my voice, as I found that I can help shift people and make people be more inspired, happier, and shift things when I use it. So it came to me. I was like, oh, well, what if I use my voice for myself? What does that sound like if I talk to myself or become my own hype man or charge myself up? So, what I've efforted to do lately, literally the last like few weeks, is to be able to start praying over myself or like charging myself up for a beautiful day. So that way I can affirm, like, man, Jamal, I'm so grateful for how you've been showing up in the community, or that you got after it today, or that you're having these conversations with these people that you've been calling in for years, and now you're doing it, Fruce, like you're doing it. So really being able to talk to myself in a more positive regard is potent. The second practice where this has come in, I think this is very powerful for all people, is journaling or reflection at the end of the day. So it's easy, especially if you're a provider, you take care of everybody else, but
Hmm.
there's so much power in that, because you had to position something a certain way, or someone needed certain medication, or you're able to just give someone a hug and just look at someone. Being able to recount back during your day the different instances, the wins, the accomplishments, the celebrations, the progress, the lessons, the acknowledgement, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, professionally, um, life wise, relationship wise, fun and adventure, financially, there is so much juice to be extracted. And the juice is meant to be enjoyed all throughout the day, of course, but I think especially at the end of the day, because if we don't create these smaller or bigger, these micro to macro spaces of acknowledgement for ourselves, well, then what's the point? Like, what's the point of it all? You're just doing, but you're supposed to enjoy this, because at some point there was a younger version of ourselves that wanted to be here in some way, shape, or form. And we are not paying homage and respect to them if we don't create space to recognize ourselves.
Wow. I wish I could drop this mic, but I can't. So
Please don't.
that speaks to me so much
Oh,
because today, interestingly enough, I didn't share this with you. I looked in the mirror, and I've done mirror work before, and I'm a crier. That's newer for me. I'm giving myself permission to feel my feelings and changing the meaning of that.
yeah, I get it.
So I don't know if you've ever done eye gazing with another person. I've done that,
Uh huh.
bawled my eyes out within the first 15 seconds. So it's so powerful, and we're so disconnected.
Yep.
But are we also disconnected from ourselves? And how can we have a conscious relationship or partnership with anyone to our fullest potential if we don't have that with ourselves. So I love that you're being your own hype man. I mean, you're that for everyone else. And I heard this on a podcast the other day, and there was this woman who looks at herself in the mirror and she tells herself something like you just said. And today I was like, you fucking got this. Like, look at how
Yeah.
far you've come. You left the
Yeah.
hospital, and I was so scared. I met you at Conscious Initiatives, and that was right after. I think I cried then too. But it was really hard to let go. Even when we
Yeah.
know something is not right for us, that doesn't make it easy. So what do I need to hear? We forget there's a little Jamal or a little Ashley inside of all of us. And we forget that. And I used to think inner child work was silly. If you look at my phone right here, I even have a picture of little me so that I can just remember.
Oh, that's so
And I talked to
good.
her, and people probably think I'm nuts,
Oh,
but that's not the weirdest thing that I've done. So now I'm looking not just at the photo, looking at myself in the mirror, and I talk to myself like I would talk to a client or to a friend or someone who was going through a hard time. What would she need to hear? Why can't
yes.
I give myself that love? So it's just so interesting that you mentioned that. How long have you been doing that practice?
Literally two weeks. Literally
Two
two
weeks. Okay.
weeks. But the prayer at the beginning of the day, that's
Yeah.
newer for me. And when I say prayer, it's not religious, it's just you can pray over yourself. Like you can intend words over yourself. Once more, first agreement. Be impeccable with your
Mm-hmm.
word. But with because I worked with my friend, his name's Michael Tucker. He's an executive coach, and he asks really powerful questions because in the self recognition, it leads to gratitude, and gratitude, it's
Yes.
so embedded in me. It used to be one of my non-negotiables, but it's not even my not like it's just embedded in all that I do because the more gratitude I feel, then the more energy and abundant I feel, and the more magnetic I become. And with my energy as a generator in human design, it's important for me to be in my fuck yeah. And if anything's in my fuck no, that's no. No. If it's not fuck yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So in self recognizing or in recognizing myself is so important and potent because it leads to more gratitude, which leads to more magnetism, which just leads to more feels and just a lot of reverence for life because I'm of the firm belief we have everything that we need right now. It's just a matter, and if you're stuck, you just haven't found the little Mario box that you had to pop up underneath so you can get a coin or you can get an extra life. You just haven't found the treasure chest. You just haven't found, because life's a video game. I got Pac-Man socks on right now, y'all. And if you don't if you haven't found the answer, it's within you. You just simply need to, once more, which is why I'm a chiropractor, you got to remove the shit that has gotten on the way of it, that has fooled you, or that has distorted the truth that you are less than whole in this moment. When in actuality, you are more powerful than you ever have been in this moment because you've made it this far, because you've conquered all the things that you've been through, because that you have adapted and you continue to adapt consciously or unconsciously. Now the point of that is, well, with this awareness of where you've been and where you're going, and when you're able to recognize yourself, now what do you want to do with it?
Yeah. That is also so powerful because so many people, including myself, think that to become better, I need to do more. I need to take something instead of it's already within me. I need to get rid of all the crap that tells me
Mm.
that it's not possible, whether it's a belief, whether it's energetic armor. I blocked a lot of love in my life.
Ooh, that's a whole podcast in itself. That's a
Yes, it
whole
is.
podcast in itself. That's
But I'm
good.
glad you brought that up because so many people think it is about bringing in the new, but also we have to create space for that. And we don't have any formal purge. Even talking about poop is weird for people. I'm like, well, we eat, it's got to go somewhere. So,
Excretion, sign of
yes,
life.
yes, assimilation and excretion. So, being and embodying are things that are
Ooh,
foreign to a lot of people. You
ooh.
are so good at this. And we are not human doings, we are human beings.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of people do you think are in being mode the majority of time that you
Oh
see?
my
At
God.
least when you start working with them.
Uh, it's 95 plus percent
Okay.
of, yeah, it's the very very vast majority of people. And ooh, this is important, and it's not out of judgment. I was there
Right.
too. Shit, I
Hmm.
still flirt going there, but this is why I have rituals, and this is why I have things throughout my day to ground and anchor me, and why I have a community to check me or, hold me accountable in different things. But I think the vast majority of people start there, but they can get lost there until they get injured. I'll say physically or emotionally.
Yeah.
They get injured physically or emotionally, and then they need to slow down because keep this in mind, y'all. Pain as an acronym we use at the source is pay attention inside now. And if you're not listening to your pain, the body will increase the symptoms
Mm-hmm.
and it will put you down energetically or physically. So the benefit of being a self-aware individual is to notice, ooh, you know what? I Something's starting to happen with my shoulders. Something's starting to happen with my body because it's a process. So if you're a self-aware individual, you can take care of it then versus just plow through it like it's easy to do so and we can do so. But if you think about it, it's pretty fucked up because that means we can override our body. And if that's the case, well, it for me it delineates power because it's like, well, that means we're not our body if we can just override it, which is that's a whole nother conversation. But the nugget that I want y'all to take away from that is the importance of being able to pay attention to your body and listen to its whispers before it makes it its screams.
Yes. And that's exactly what happened to me. I had the message, but I was scared. I invested 175,000 in my nursing career. I didn't know what else I was going to do. So I just kept hitting the override button until my body
Mm,
literally couldn't take it anymore. And then for a year, I had to focus on emotional healing, which made me very upset to hear. Like, that's stupid because I didn't learn about it in school, but it is
mm,
the work. So
mm,
how would you say being such a light, being such a giver, being such a, I mean, truly high vibrational person who your presence alone, like, makes me cry. You are just such an amazing soul. How do you fill your cup? You give to people all day. So what does that look like for you?
mm. Man, that's such a great question. I receive your words as it's little things or big things like this. It's having conversations with. I'm an extrovert. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
probably, probably some. I used to be an introvert. I used to be really shy growing up, but I get charged up with community. So some of my favorite things that I like to do is to celebrate with community, to talk about things, talk about ideas, talk about goals. Like, because there's so much happening, Ash. Like, there's so many good things happening here in Tucson. There's so many things. Like, there's so many people healing at the source. It charges me up literally to talk about things, which makes me really happy. As community is something that I didn't have very strongly growing up. So the fact that I have it here in this life, like being able to connect to you, it's just so rich. Like it's so rich of a life that I get to celebrate, connect to community, connect to humans that are trying to do better for society. And from more of a physiological standpoint, your boy loves getting a massage once every other week.
Okay.
um, Sauna time is very important for me. Go to the pillars of health. I probably could sleep more, as I'm excited to get a new bed probably the next few months so I can make it more of a sanctuary. But when it comes to movement, take care of my body, meditate, take care of my mind. I love reading, but I get a very, very, very depthful charge from seeing progress in myself. And I think my mentor, Dr. Suki Mooker, who's also a chiropractor in BC, and he's a powerful, powerful man, he highlighted that progress is one of the keystones to happiness. And right now, I love being happy with what I have and where I'm at in life. So it feels really good just to be able to continuously recognize that. As I think the reflection and the gratitude practice, that's what keeps it going for me.
Amazing. So how can people find you and work with you?
Oh, great question. So you can look up the source Tucson, as you can Google that as the website should be thesourcetucson.com. But you can look me up on IG at Dr.
Hmm.
Jamal Früster. Send me a message. Like if you listen to this, please send me a message. I'll happily be able
Yes.
to give you a discount in some way, shape, or form, throw you a soul coffee sticker, or do something to be able to say thank you. But off my Instagram also, you can find my website, which is drjamalfrooster.com. And that's where
Okay.
you'll find, if you want to work with me one on one, if you want to, dive into some video modules. I have a video module course on chasing your own personal legend, chiropractic care, of course. And then recently I started doing a workshop called Providing for the Provider. So if you're
Mm.
in Arizona, if you're in Tucson, come through. Would love to have you. But I also have a Zoom option. And I do that as a monthly workshop to be able to pour into my people. And if you listen to this podcast, just mention it, and I'll happily give you a discount code for that, as I'd love, love, love to have you.
That's amazing. Send me the link. We'll put it in the show notes because a lot of
Cool.
my audience is local. A lot of my audience through 2020, a lot of them are healthcare professionals themselves who are closeted and want to leave, but they don't know how, and they're learning to
Mm,
trust themselves and see that it's possible to do. And
mm.
I will definitely be down in Tucson to come see you back at the source
Let's
very soon.
go.
And it's such a beautiful space. I love Dr. Brett, and you have different, you two I think have very different energies, and I really really like him. He brings out something different, but you are just pure love, and I'm so grateful for you and your
Mm,
time and your energy. So I look
mm,
forward to connecting in
mm.
Tucson and to come on Soul Coffee. Oh yeah, check out the
Oh my
podcast as well.
goodness. Yeah, check out some Soul Coffee, y'all. I imagine Ash will
Yeah.
be back after her very deluxe Iceland retreat, which I'm so excited to hear about. And
Yeah.
oh my goodness, I can't wait to even just hear about like the integration and what comes through there. So stay tuned in late March. I imagine we'll get Ash on Soul Coffee.
Yes. Okay, great. Well, thank you again. And I look forward to connecting with you in real life. And if anyone is local, give them a shout out either online or go to Tucson. It will be very worth your time. So
Oh,
thank you.
beautiful. Thank you all for listening. Until next time, peace.
Okay, bye. Thank you for listening to the High Maintenance Hippie podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and leave a review, ideally a 5-star review if you loved it. All of this is free of charge and really helps me to be able to run the podcast. If you take a screenshot and tag me, I'll repost you and shout you out on Instagram. So tag Ashley Taylor Wellness and High Maintenance Hippie Podcast. If you have any feedback or guests that you'd like to have, I would love to hear from you so that I'm not just talking at you. I really want to deliver things that are valuable. So send me an email with any feedback, suggestions, or ideas for guests at ashley@ashleytaylorwellness.com. And I will leave you with a disclaimer. Please know that this is not medical advice or replacement for seeking medical care. Everything discussed on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Always consult with your medical provider before making any changes. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.